Hello, everyone. Excited to share this episode with you today. And what I wanted to do is let's just take a step back and let's think about our inner game right now. There's so much that we can't control with what's going on in the world. And maybe there is something that we can control in the midst of all this. And I know this is not like a free pass here. I know, Brad, this is something that you're struggling with. So really this episode is just as much for you as it is for our audience.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Jonathan. I think, it's interesting. The last 10 years of my life has been a journey of self-exploration, about self-improvement. And, I think I've gotten to a place where, obviously I'm always trying to improve, but where I'm content. And I don't think that's a word that I would have used to describe myself 10 years ago, or certainly prior to that. And, I certainly have struggled with anxiety and rumination and thinking about things constantly. And, I thought I had kind of defeated those demons, let's say, but I think, I've noticed them pop up more often now, in the last couple of weeks. And, even down to having a couple nearly sleepless nights the last couple of days. And it's crazy because, on the one hand, I'm saying to myself, I have this incredible family. We're spending this miraculous time together. We have 5 months together as this family unit. We're loving it, but yet this anxiety and these fears keep popping up. And I think that's normal at this point. And I wanted to talk about it openly and honestly because I don't want people to think you should be ashamed of those feelings or you should try to stamp them down. Like this is what a lot of people, millions, tens of millions of people are going through right now. And the person that I thought to speak with was my buddy, Dominic Quartuccio. And we've had Dom on numerous times on the podcast. He has a great podcast called The Great Man Within. And he's the guy that I go to lean on. And I wanted to bring him to the show to help us talk through this and ways that we can fortify our internal game right now to, try to find a way maybe to make peace with this, to understand it, to just get a sense. So Dom, with that long-winded intro, welcome back to ChooseFI.
It's so great to be back. Brad, Jonathan, great to see you fellas again. I love your community. I've had a chance to meet some of your people face-to-face over this last year. Love what you're doing. And Brad, just for you personally, and for the millions of others that you are correctly calling upon who are feeling this way, I just want to allow you some permission to feel however it is that you're feeling. Like, these are unprecedented times. We've never been through something like this in human history. We are all facing the same threat for the first time in human history. Like, we're not battling each other as people. We're actually it's almost like the movie Independence Day, where Will Smith and the aliens are coming from. It's like we're all actually, as humans, able to experience the same thing, and it's quite scary on a number of levels. And to allow yourself some slack, and also to recognize that, like, those wake-up calls at 2 a.m, Brad, that you're getting is nothing more than just an opportunity for you to listen to yourself around, like, where this anxiousness is and how can we give you a few techniques on how to fortify your inner state of being so you can feel more grounded, peaceful, and that you've got all of the tools at your disposal to navigate this uncertain time.
Sounds like something I can use in great need here. So I love it. So how do we get into this? How do we think about it? Like, you obviously have people that rely on you. Yep. And that you've been talking to, you've been making presentations. Like, how do you even start to help people recognize, A, that this is okay, and B, that there is a problem in the first place, or something they should be thinking about?
Yeah, the first thing that I do is I just try to get a pulse for where people are right now. So over the last 2 weeks, I've talked to hundreds of different people, whether it's one-on-one conversations or running webinars for groups of people. And I always ask one question. I ask, what is the one word that best describes how you are feeling right now? And when I've done this in a webinar format, people are putting that word into the chat box. And my chief operating officer has taken all of those words and put it into like a word cloud. And some of the biggest words, the number one biggest word that comes up over and over again is anxious. Some other big words are uncertain, overwhelmed, isolated, worried, helpless, bored, worn down. And so I just want you to know that these are the words that are coming up the most, which means like you're not alone. There are some other words that are coming up also, which are blessed, grateful, hopeful. Those words are not coming up with the same level of frequency, but they're starting to emerge more and more as I ask the question, which is an indicator to me that we are starting to settle into the experience. And what I found is that there's three big challenges that people are facing right now. If I had to thematically summarize what I'm seeing right now, the three biggest challenges that people are finding are, number one, keeping a positive mindset, because every day it seems like there's more and more negative news. So even the most optimistic folks are feeling like they're being beaten down. Number two, poor habits. While I'm being stuck at home, I'm finding that maybe I'm not sleeping the way that I should. I'm not waking up the way that I should. I'm not eating quite properly. I'm getting interrupted all the time. I'm not feeling productive anymore. My habits are struggling. And the third one is that people are either feeling a sense of isolation or suffocation, right? So I'm a dude living by myself here in New York City. I haven't had physical touch. I haven't hugged someone. I haven't shaken a hand in 3 weeks. Right? Like there's never been a period of time in my life where I've gone that long without physical touch. And imagine the feeling that might go through. And there's a lot of people out there who are living on their own, who are feeling isolated, and others who are starting to feel suffocated because even when you're with your family, they're always around, maybe wearing the same things all the time and getting in your space. And how do we overcome these three big challenges? So I think the first place, Brad, is just for us to kind of name where we're at right now, and then ask yourself, where do you want to be? And we can build a map there.
Yeah, Dom, it struck me as you were saying blessed and positive words like that are popping up more often. There is almost like a false dichotomy. Like in my mind, I'm thinking because I do on one hand feel blessed and I do on the other hand feel anxious. And I think that's probably normal as well. And normally you don't think of those things as being, in line with each other. But this is, as you said, such unprecedented times that I think for the people out there, it's probably okay that you feel both blessed and anxious at the same time or at alternating times during the day, right?
Absolutely. There's a brilliant author. Her name is Roxane Gay. In her book, Bad Feminist, I remember she wrote this quote that I always reference. She says, "We are a mass of contradictions." What that means is internally, I can feel confident and insecure. I can feel peaceful and I could feel unsure at the same time. We're always feeling, different parts of us are feeling contradictory feelings all of the time. So of course, you can feel panicked. You could feel frustrated. You could feel angry and resentful, and at the same time feel blessed because maybe now you're spending unprecedented time with your family. So just actually even being aware of and giving yourself permission to feel those full range of emotions is actually quite a big first step into embracing this new experience that we're in.
So Dom, you said, the three things that people are struggling with, and the first was keeping a positive mindset. I mean, yeah. I guess I'd love for you to just talk about it and expound on it, but positive mindset, obviously I don't think it's realistic, at least for me, to be positive 24 hours a day. And I don't think you're implying that, right? Is this something that we're constantly working at? Is it do you give yourself a few minutes a day to kind of, okay, I can have my freak out moment? Talk me through, what does this look like? But I'll let you just roll with how you describe it.
Totally. Yeah. First things first is there's no should here. There's no should that you're supposed to feel positive right now, that you're supposed to feel grateful right now. There are people who are listening right now who have lost their businesses. Some people have lost loved ones. Some people are sick that you care about. And so to feel like you're supposed to have a positive mindset can actually be a total disservice to where you're at right now. And there's also this opportunity to say, if you're feeling a certain way and at a certain point you are looking to maybe upgrade or elevate those feelings, there are plenty of tools that are available at your disposal when you've gone through the grieving process or when you've felt that feeling of anger or resentment or fear, to allow space for that first fully and then to move forward into something else. And maybe to make this a little bit more clear, in situations like these, fellas, like I like to look at people who have gone through the ringer, like over periods of time, and have come out the other side stronger. And one book I love to pop off my shelf during times like these is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor, right? He spent 3 years in concentration camps, including Auschwitz. He lost his entire family. And Frankl found hope in the most hopeless of circumstances. And he says, and this is a brilliant quote, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. He was living in an environment where all of his liberty was stripped from him, right? He was beaten, he was starved, he was humiliated, his family was taken from him, never to be seen again. But the thing that could never be taken from him was his ability to hope, was his ability to choose his attitude. He fortified his inner foundation and then survived, not only survived, but thrived in the years after that. And his works have helped millions of people. And so he's inspired me to put together what I call is this protocol. It's called Adapting to the New Normal, and 4 ways to fortify your inner foundation during times of change. And so I've brought for the ChooseFI community 4 of these ways that you can fortify your inner foundation when you are ready, that help you to tap into the parts of you that are strong, to tap into the parts of you that are looking for positive habits and positive mindsets, and also to stay connected to those that you care about so you can stave off those feelings of isolation and or suffocation.
All right, let's hear it. Where do we start?
Okay. So the first place to fortify your inner foundation is, number 1, to embrace the bumpy transition. This is a mindset shift. To just embrace the fact that this is going to be a bumpy transition because your map is updating. Your map of the world is updating. Let me give you an example. 4 years ago right now at the time of this recording, I was in a 10-day silent meditation. I had never done something so extreme in my life. And if you don't know anything about silent meditations, it's exactly what it sounds like. You sit in silence, you don't talk to anybody for 10 days, and you're meditating 16 or 17 hours per day. In addition to that, you're relinquishing your cell phone. You put it in a locker for 10 days. You're not reading, you're not writing, you're not exercising. You only eat twice a day. You wake up at 4 a.m., you go to bed at 10:30 p.m. And as much as I prepared myself mentally for that environment, I had no concept of what that was going to feel like until I showed up. And on days 1 and 2, it was torture because I had no concept of what it was like to give away all my earthly comforts and my freedoms. My body was not ready for sitting still all of those times. My body was not ready for not having any external information coming in. My body was in pain physically and emotionally. My mind was running on overdrive. For 48 hours, I was in misery. And on the 3rd morning, when I hit my tipping point, finally something broke. When I was woken up at 4 a.m. in the morning, I was sitting for my first 90-minute meditation. About 20 minutes in, the pain was so agonizing that something inside of me shifted where physically my body just started releasing something. I was almost like shaking a little bit. Tears streamed through my eyes. And for 15 minutes, that was all that was happening. I had no idea what was going on. And then finally that cleared. And what ended up happening after that, there was like this space. My body didn't hurt anymore. My mind was quiet. And I had finally arrived in this environment. And what I'm trying to say here, fellas, is that for those first 48 hours, my body was fighting this new reality that I was in because it had been conditioned to living a certain way for decades of my life. And there was pain in that transition of finally adjusting to the new normal. Many of us, many of you, and Brad, this is part of what you're experiencing right now, is like you're adjusting to this new normal, which is causing friction, it's causing anxiousness, causing you to wake up in the middle of the night because you haven't fully landed in this new experience yet. So really the first part, this first way of fortifying your inner foundation is actually just recognizing that and not resisting the feelings that you're feeling, to allow space for that, because you will settle into this new environment if you embrace it.
So it's a level of acceptance, right? It's just looking at the world as it is, right? Because clearly it has changed, right? Regardless of how long or short this lasts, it has changed. And I guess it's ultimately how you react to that change, right? Because the change is reality.
Yes.
And you can, like you said, during the first 48 hours, you can kind of hold on to maybe the old paradigm, or at some point, that level of acceptance hits and you just have to kind of lean into the new reality. Am I hearing you right?
Absolutely. I was talking to a dear friend of mine. Her name is Stan, who crystallizes this story perfectly. Her daughter Harper was diagnosed with leukemia. Her daughter was, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years old at the time. Beautiful young girl. And she said, Stan said that the most difficult time during the multiple years of going through chemotherapy were the first 30 days. And Stan said the first 30 days were torture because she hadn't accepted the reality that her daughter had leukemia and had to go through the pain of chemotherapy. And every single day for Stan, it was torture watching her daughter suffer through this. But after the 30 days, when Stan finally stopped denying or rejecting that this was going to be the path forward, it didn't get easy, but it got easier, right? There's nothing easy about being a parent whose child's life is possibly threatened. But when she was able to accept that this is, like, my daughter does have cancer, and we are going to be on the long road here, that it dropped her into being a more resourceful mother who was able to feel strong, even though she felt fear on a regular basis. And so a part of this reality, Brad, is accepting that you may feel anxious on a regular basis, and probably should, because you care about your family, you care about the economy, you care about, right? Like, you should feel that on a regular basis, and without rejecting the fact that it's here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Brad and I are two different individuals with two different personalities, and that's great because our audience has, a million different variations of those personalities as well. And I am deeply troubled and concerned for what I'm seeing both in the economy and in people's lives, people that I know that are getting sick, it's that fear of the unknown. I feel like what I'm experiencing in my own life is a recalibration of what I expected versus what I'm seeing, and I'm recalibrating, and I think I'm recalibrating very, very quickly to this quote unquote new normal. And in my own case, my own personality, I find myself, all right, what can I control? What do I need to control now? And then anything that I can't have any impact on, I very quickly black box, and I look around to see, all right, what are the parameters of what I can control, and stay there. And I haven't lost any sleep. I'm not going to say that I'm not without levels of anxiety because I can't control the future. And I'd love to be able to control the future and tell it exactly what to do, but I can't. But I've kind of made peace with that pretty quickly. And now I find as soon as I have all right, I understand what the next 6 months are going to look like at, a financial level, et cetera. Now I'm kind of able to now look out and say, all right, what else can I have an impact on? Like something simple like going to donate blood. I feel confident going to do that. It's on my to-do list this week. It's a very small thing that I can do to help, but I can do that. And kind of even that small amount of agency gives me a sense of confidence going into each and every day. My neighbors are sick. Can I go get them groceries? Because they shouldn't be going to get groceries right now. Those little things, once you kind of understand the parameters, you understand the unknown. You understand, all right, it is unknown, but this is how I expect. This is what it looks like. This is the worst case scenario over the next 6 months. Okay, now inside of those constraints, what can I do? That's kind of the place that I'm living right now.
That's it. We're looking to control what we can control. That's what Viktor Frankl did when he was in the concentration camp. Like, the only thing he had left that was under his control was how he directed his thoughts and the attitude that he was going to choose to have, like what meaning he was going to make out of that moment. And he did so in a really powerful way. So, like, one of the other ways that I'm looking at how people can take back control of their day, and this is the second way that I offer up as a way to fortify your inner foundation, is to develop an information consumption protocol. Because what I'm finding for most people, and this hits right to the core of of why people are feeling increasingly anxious and why they're not able to keep they're finding it elusive to find some positivity in this, is because we are indiscriminately consuming information that's being thrown at us. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. He said, back in 1975, there was basically like the evening news, and that was it. Like you consumed like one piece of news per day, and then you went off the rest of your day and did your thing. Right now, we are like the floodgates are open, and we are being battered with like a fire hose of information, tweets and social media posts and breaking news and notifications on your phone. And one of the things that I learned, fellas, was that in the first week after the coronavirus quarantine broke, my screen time on my phone ballooned up to over 5.5 hours per day. Now, I came on your podcast maybe about a year ago, and I told you that for a period of 2 years, I'd gotten my screen time on my phone down to about 2 hours and 15 minutes. That is a very personal thing for me, right? I'm not telling you that's the right number, because some people like to read their books on their phone, or they use Google Maps when they drive a lot. So whatever the number is, it needs to work for you. But I had over a 150% increase in that first week. And I knew that I had gone up. I didn't realize it was that drastic. So I needed to actually pull back the reins and say, what do I want to consume? So I developed this 4-point information consumption plan. And by the way, I put all of this stuff together in a free downloadable PDF for your audience, so I can share how to get that, so they don't need to take notes on this right now. So I put these all into a slides. The 4 things that I'm doing for my information consumption plan that has served me really well over the last 2 weeks is, number 1, I'm not consuming any content for the first 60 minutes of the day. What I'm finding is most people are waking up, diving right into the news, and they're entering that anxious anxiety cycle all over again. For me, I'm fortifying my first 60 minutes of the day by doing meditation and journaling and breath work, exercise, whatever I need to go inward before I go outward. The second thing that I'm doing is I'm carefully selecting the information sources that I trust, right? Everyone knows the story about it's like my friend's aunt's husband's cousin is a nurse at the Mount Sinai Hospital who says this. And we're taking that information in a game of telephone that we don't know what it's done to us once it's got here. Are those credible sources of information that we can rely upon? Or are they just making us scarier? I've picked a handful of sources news-wise that I trust, and a few people who I filter information through. Otherwise, if someone's sending me a link in a group chat or a text message, I don't click on it. I'm rejecting 98% of the information that comes my way unless it's sourced from a place that I trust. And the last 2 pieces here, fellows, before I'll pause is I've turned off all non-essential notifications on my phone. We talked about this the last time I was on your show. Anything that's not mission critical, the people who are relying upon you or who need to get you in a moment's notice, turn off the social media notifications, the breaking news apps. If you check your phone every 20 to 30 minutes, there's very rarely going to be something that you're going to miss that you can't pick up the pieces on a little bit later. But the notifications popping up over the course of your day is just it's feeding that anxiety cycle. And the last piece for me, and this is really personal for me, and I encourage everyone to define their own on this, I'm limiting the number of times I check my phone. I check the news to 2 or 3 times a day. So I'm only going into the news in the morning after probably an hour or 2 of not looking at anything. I'm doing it midday, and I'm doing it once at the end of the day, no more than an hour before bedtime. So I'm basically checking the news 3 times a day, which allows me to be informed. I know how to take safety precautions. I'm not missing any important news, and I'm also not overfeeding my system, and that keeps me in a place of stability. And since I've been implementing this with my clients, they're like, thank you. I feel now I'm not waking up at night with those things running through my mind as often, because it's news has just been coming at me throughout the entire day.
And what's interesting about that, and Brad, I'll push this back on you, is something that in good times, this was easy to acknowledge, that the 24-hour news cycle does not have your best interest at heart. It is not to inform you, but to hook you through the next commercial break. But suddenly, all of that self-control, all of that intellectual honesty When it's something like this, it goes right out the window. And suddenly you need the news. You need to know that the presidential ratings on the daily briefing were the most popular thing ever. You need to know that, all suddenly you have to know what's coming up so that you can stay informed. And I don't know, Brad, as someone that kind of studies game theory, I can imagine you're particularly susceptible to this.
Yeah. It's been a journey for me. It really has. I think in all honesty, I've gotten better over the last 10 days or so. I think when this first went crazy, and Jonathan, we had been talking about this. I'd been following this since early February, basically. But when it really hit a couple of weeks ago, I was on my computer taking in news more than I have probably in a 3-day span, more than I have in the combined 3 years prior. Like to the point where, we've talked before with the happy philosopher, right? He talked about alligators and kittens, where you want to get all of the alligators out of your house first, all the negative things, the things that are destroying you, like news, the 24-hour news cycle. And I'd done that to a great degree. Like Dom said, I turned off notifications, and I'm still good there. But man, I just kept checking. I had this, it was like this driving impulse, and I've been dramatically better than that recently, and certainly in the last week or so. I think, like Dom said, credible sources of info. That is just such a critical skill just for life generally. Like, I think this is one of those kind of unknown ways that you need to figure out to succeed at life. And obviously it's not my place to tell you what you should be taking in or what you should listen to. But I know personally for me, I listened to the podcast by Dr. Peter Attia, called The Drive. And when he started the coronavirus podcast on episode 97, and those are essential pieces of information for me. Somebody I trust recommended a podcast called This Week in Virology. So these are doctors who are dealing with infectious diseases. And I mean, that to me is credible. So I'm not listening to every Joe Schmo's podcast on coronavirus and why you need to take cover and jump in a bunker. I'm trying to listen to reasoned advice from doctors that I trust. And I think, Dom, I hope you'd agree with me that that at least makes sense. But is there even if I came back to you 2 weeks from now and said, I found 2 other podcasts by doctors I trust, there has to be some limit, right? So how do you think through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It boils down to how much is enough, right? So you've gotten to the stage of filtering out the quality, and you basically have your parameters for filtering out quality. But then start to think about information like food. It's how much do I need in order to fuel my system so that I can operate optimally? And so it's for me, I'm thinking for me, two or 3 times a day is enough for me to know what's my situation here in New York City. How can I be a good citizen? What do I need to do to take care of myself and my family? And when I feel like my bases are covered there, I don't need to read anything else. I don't need to read that next thing or consume that next piece of information. So for you, Brad, it sounds also like another parameter should be my mental well-being, right? It's kind of if I prefer going to sleep and waking up the next day after 7 hours of consecutive sleep without waking up in the middle of the night at 2:00 and then boom, my day is gone, then you're going to have to determine how much information do you actually need before your belly is full, your metaphorical information belly is full.
Yeah. And I think for all the listeners out there, this is something I have been thinking about, because I did subscribe to a whole bunch of these podcasts, the coronavirus global update by BBC, and CNN has Sanjay Gupta doing a podcast. And I wasn't getting a ton of value from that. And it was, if anything, it was just making me anxious. So those are gone. They're just flat out gone. Like I said, I kept those couple of podcasts from experts that I trust. But I think maybe when you go to the extreme, you can and I'm not implying that you should go to the extreme, obviously, but if you have gone past where you feel comfortable, where you should be, I clearly knew in my intellectual side that this was not where I wanted to be. This was not even healthy at all. And it did take a couple of days to figure out, all right, I have to limit this, and I need to be discerning with what I actually listen to. So, because also, again, you have this anxiety spiral, right? I've talked about this on the podcast before about how when and Dom, you actually helped me through this, which was I subscribed to like 28 different podcasts, and I felt this pull to check off the boxes, right? Like a dutiful type A person that I used to be, and my kind of former life, and it's always there, right? It's always lurking under the surface, and I think I was seeing something as stupid as, even in good times, I've got to check off the box of, I have to listen to these 28 podcasts. Well, no, dummy, you don't need to do that. Like, you can listen to 0 podcasts. You can listen to 5 or whatever the number is that you find some equilibrium, right? And I think I've found that, or I'm striving to find that certainly now with information consumption.
This happens with everything. It happens with when we sign up for podcasts, when we read books, when we follow people on social media. In the moment that you hit subscribe or follow, there's a justifiable reason in that moment. But then it slowly mushrooms out bigger, and then all of a sudden you're collapsing under the weight of all this information that's coming at you, all the people that you're following. So it's time to do like what Marie Kondo does best, right? The life-changing magic of tidying up. It's kind of like reconnecting with, why am I seeking this information? Like, first and foremost, and what am I looking for? I'm looking for to make sure that like my family's taken care of, that I'm safe, that I'm informed. Okay, great. What do I need in order to create those conditions? And it may just be, now you look at your 28 podcasts, it may just be 3 podcasts that can like hit 90% of that. And it may just be like 2 sources of daily emails that you get that, boom, cover basically 95% of what you need. And the rest of that just starts to go away. So you become, like you said, a discerning, refined master of your information consumption.
Yeah, I definitely think that I have moved quickly to less. I've established a plan in my personal life. I've got my bases under control. And at this point, I don't feel the need to know more about this virus, like how it transmits, what its unique attributes are, what its virility is, even to some degree what its death rate is at this point, because I can't control it. What am I going to do with that information? How is it going to spill over into every aspect of my life? We know the best thing that we can do right now is just create some space between us and other individuals. Like that, they're not saying anything different. They're saying keep space. Do your best to stay away from other people. That's it. There's not really a whole lot else that they can offer at this point. And when it is, it really won't affect my life dramatically at this point. So, once I know that, I agree with you. I want to know if the mortality rates are going down. I want to know if it's spreading less quickly. I want to know if we're starting, but I'm not going to get that from breaking news. It's not going to happen because for everyone that says that it's going down, you're going to find 5 more that says it's going up. There's no way. It's just a yo-yo where your emotions are trading from this tiny glimmer of optimism to the depths of despair, depending, and you just. So I've just kind of, all right, what is the consistent theme that I'm saying? Give everyone some space. As best as you can, give everyone some space. And that's kind of like, okay. Now yes, I only want to look at quality information. I also want to decrease my volume. And if something dramatically changes, I'm sure it will make its way to my ears.
And Dom, I'm curious too. Obviously, I hear what Jonathan's saying, and a large part of me agrees with that. But I know by virtue of us having this podcast, but let's even put that aside, there are many, many people listening to this podcast are leaders in their communities, at their jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And people look to people like us to know information and do the right thing and lead by example. So for instance, like even just something as simple as like, to me, the biggest, and not to get into the depths of what's going on with the actual virus, but like the biggest piece of misinformation I think is going to kill a lot of people is that this is a disease that impacts only older people. And that was something that was quote unquote true in February in China, but we've learned that that is not the case. And in my estimation, like if I hadn't been taking in information and hearing from trusted experts that this is factually inaccurate and is going to hurt a lot of people, like I wouldn't be doing my job as someone that people look to. So like there is this balance, right? Of like, again, I think I answer my own question, which is it comes back to balance. But that's something I struggle with is seeing both sides of this. Ideally liking to take in as little as possible, but also realizing that I need to take in information far and wide to be able to synthesize it in my own head, to be able to disseminate it to people that are maybe looking to me as someone that they trust.
Right. You, Brad, and you, Jonathan, are leaders of your community. I'm a leader of mine. And I think one of the most important things that we have to understand as leaders is knowing where our edges are. And what I mean by that is like being very clear when we are communicating to our audiences about something that is unprecedented, that we're not experts in, right? I mean, none of us are doctors and none of us have direct access to what's happening behind the scenes at the highest of levels, that we need to know and communicate effectively to our audiences about here's where I am speaking from. Like, this is the place that I'm communicating from. This is what I know. This is what I don't know. Here's where I'm going to weigh in. Here's where I'm not. And I think, Jonathan, you've been very clear about it's like, here's the position that I'm taking. Here's how I'm thinking about this. And if you feel like this is a useful position for you to take, then great, listen to me. Brad, same thing for you. It's like you have constructed your own ecosystem to say, look, like, here are the boundaries, the perimeters of what I plan on talking about. Here's the information that I'm taking in. Here's how I plan to help my audience. But where I see people getting into trouble is when you have some like influencer out there who is not a medical doctor and they're citing, and they're going out and talking about like refuting medical advice, because like whatever, they have someone who's like a friend who's a nurse in one hospital that said something. And I think that's where we become irresponsible. So Brad, I think that's a roundabout way of answering your question, which is, yes, as leaders, we do absolutely have a responsibility to our audiences to step up and let them know the position that we are taking, and to be very clear that it's not gospel that they have to follow, but it is very much something about how we are processing the situation. And if it's useful, if it helps where a person's at, then follow suit.
Dom, the last thing I wanted to spend just a few minutes on as we start to think about wrapping up here is talking about habits. And what's interesting about this, silver lining, even in the darkest night, is that a lot of us suddenly are confronted with time that we didn't have before. And our routines that we, for good or ill, took up all that time and maybe didn't allow us to do something that we really wanted to do has been ripped away from us. And now we're potentially having the opportunity to create new routines from scratch. So I would be curious. I just want to give you the floor here. Like, where's the silver lining here? What's the opportunity for those of us that are looking to build something really cool out of this, kind of dark place that we find ourselves?
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about morning and evening routines, which are the bookends of your day. This is where you optimize the 16, 17, 18 waking hours in between. And I'll mention this again at the end of the episode, but you can download, like I put a PDF together with all of this information. If you just send a text message to 44222 and you type ChooseFI 2020, it's all one word, ChooseFI 2020 to the number 44222. You can download all of this. So that the biggest areas where I'm finding people are struggling with their habits right now, fellas, is in their morning and evening routines. The morning routine, their phone is their alarm clock. The alarm goes off. Before their feet hit the floor, they're already buried into their social media and their news. Anxiety cycle spirals again, right? End of the night, I'm finding people are tired. They're lethargic. They're not eating the way they want. They bring their phones, their laptops, their computers into their bed. And the last thing they see before lights out is either the third or fourth episode in a row of like whatever that new Tiger show is on Netflix, or they're reading like, the deep domain stuff on Reddit about conspiracy theories about coronavirus. And it's not doing anyone any good. So what I am really focusing people on is how you wake up the first 15 to 60 minutes of your day. The last 30 to 60 minutes of your night are going to be essential to how you show up in the rest of the day. And in the PDF that you're going to be able to download, I give you about 7 suggestions for your morning routine, but I'll just hit 1 or 2. I already mentioned one, which is like for the first 60 minutes of your day, if you can do at least 15, don't check your phone, do something internally. And in its place, you could do something like Brad and I are doing breathwork exercises with Wim Hof, and Wim Hof is spelled WIMHOF. He has a free app that you can download that allows you to like connect with your breathing. It reduces your anxiety and it boosts your immune system. Two things that are absolutely essential right now are, and we've heard doctors talk about this, right, Brad, where your immune system health is essential right now. Breath work is easy. It takes under 5 minutes, and it does both reduce your anxiety and increases your immune system. So like breath work is something to do in the morning. Journaling, to get your thoughts out of your head on a piece of paper, anything you're stressed or anxious about. Or what I like to do is audio journaling. I pull out my cell phone, which is the one time I do pull out my phone. I pull up voice memos and I'll just start recording what's going on in my head. It's like a brain dump for 5 to 10 minutes to get the fear out, the cobwebs gone, so I can allow other things to surface. And the last piece I'll just hit really quickly, which is, the end of the night. My last half hour, I'm not looking at anything externally. I'm maybe reading a fiction novel that has nothing to do with like my brain development. It just eases me down. I'm not worried about anything. I fall asleep very easily within 3 or 4 minutes. And I try to go to bed within the same 90-minute period of time every single night, from 10 to 11:30 p.m. every single night. And I do that pretty well because what that helps me to do is it establishes a wind down routine and it gets me my most effective quality of sleep. So again, if you want to download that PDF, you can go to, I think it's 44222 is the text, and then ChooseFI 2020. It has all of the stuff that we talked about today.
Awesome. And Dom, just for our audience, if they want to connect with you, your content, your podcast, where can they find that?
The Great Man Within podcast is the place to go for that. And doinnerwork.com. We have a ton of resources on there, like books you can download and meditations that will help you get through this time too.
Dom, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Appreciate you, fellas.
All right, everyone, we made it to the weekend. Thanks for joining us today. I hope this podcast has brought some level of encouragement and value to your life this week. And if that's the case, make sure you hit the subscribe button before you go to stay tuned with us throughout this turbulent time. We'll pick up next week. Got a lot of great content coming your way. And if you are personally getting started on your own path to financial independence, if you're trying to build some financial resilience for yourself and your family, go to our webpage at ChooseFI.com. Check out our financial resilience toolkit with a list of resources that we have curated for you to help you through this process. Best time to get started 10 years ago, second best time today. Let's get started today. Go to ChooseFI.com. All right, we'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.